Everybody, happy Monday. Today is December 4th, 2023. This is Across the Pitch. I am Mike Rera. I am joined by my lovable partner, Jose Nunez. We are missing Dave Miller tonight. He's occupied in England doing whatever the British do at 2 a.m. But
baked beans.
And just have a funny accent. So it's just the two of us tonight. Jose, how you doing today?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing okay. It's been a long weekend, a lot going on my end behind the scenes in terms of busy and family stuff that, as I mentioned to you before starting the show, keeping busy has been very, very helpful. So doing a show like this as we process so much over the past, week and a half that, we were waiting for the release of these roster decisions, and now, combination with the Cincinnati game, we have a lot to talk about, and I think we're going to try to be nice and tight in terms of a 40-minute window, 45-minute window as we wrap up this year. And good news, we don't have a long time to wait for the preseason to start.
Yeah, basically starts tomorrow. We have one comment that says, "Where's Chip?" I think you're on the wrong show, buddy. Sorry, but I did get to meet Chip a couple weeks back at Cherry Hill PJ's. He was like, "I'm at PJ's." I said, "I'll be there in 15 seconds," because I live right next to it, and it was a great time. So yeah, Chip is a good time. I met Tila as well, which is great. Great meeting both of them. No, I agree with you, Jose. It's nice to just kind of take your mind off things for a bit, talk about some soccer. We haven't actually talked since before the Eastern Conference semifinal, so we actually didn't get to even express ourselves about the loss. So what are your it's been 2 weeks now, Jose. What do you think now that the Union have lost, and so has Cincinnati, by the way?
Yeah, I'm a big subscriber to the notion or the idea, I guess, that I'd rather lose to the eventual winner. Obviously, that wasn't the case with Cincinnati. I really do think that what happened with them in Columbus is the perfect, and I can't take credit for this. I think someone posted it in a comment or a retweet of my video of Cincinnati losing the way they did is like the perfect example of ball don't lie, right? Where
100%.
maybe referees assisted in some way or another, or bad calls, etc., that went the way to help out Cincinnati. But ultimately, a team like Columbus is gritty and hardworking with stars that are not really in the limelight all the time, like Darlington and Nagby coming through and assisting Lucho Acosta and the rest to their exit. It was just an unbelievable match, and nothing like, not even close to what we experienced with on the bad side of the MLS Cup final last year. But nonetheless, a very good match, and I'm fine. It stank. I promised myself to not post any more about the dumb offsides decision, because at this point it's just so tired, right? We know it was wrong, or at least I tell myself it's wrong.
Yeah, it's also what a turnaround for Nancy, the coach. Coming from Montreal last year, he comes to Columbus, and you knew it was going to be a good squad. We kind of talked about it early in the season before the home opener. Like, I think the Columbus team could be really good, and Nancy got that team playing pretty well. They're easy to like, to be perfectly honest with you. They really are.
And their summer additions were just incredible, right? And bringing some of these bodies. Obviously, they had Lucas. Is it Luca or Lucas? I can't remember. Selerayan, who's the Armenian player who departed to go to Saudi Arabia. I think one of the first bodies from MLS to actually make the jump to the Saudi League, specifically through all the money and wealth that is being tossed around to make that league relevant, etc. They really reloaded, and it shows, right? They're about to play an MLS Cup final. They're about to host MLS Cup final, which is another thing, like definitely a far cry from the team that the Union defeated early on in the season with Joaquin Torres spin cycle move leading to that goal very early on in the season. I think it was the home opener, actually.
It was.
Yeah. So, I'm so happy for them. Not so sad for Cincinnati. Oh my God!
No, especially with the Miazga thing, it's just one of those teams that was really easy to hate, and then they lost and made it even more enjoyable. And as you said, the way they lost was just poetic justice for all of us Union fans out there who needed to see that happen.
So interestingly enough, though, Mike, it was 100% like and I talked about this with a couple of friends through social media and other collaborators and content creators. Mike, Pat Noonan got Pat Noonan, right? It was his best Jim Curtin impersonation in terms of being outcoached, both in substitutions, tactically. Wilfred Nancy, brought Weapon X of Gressel to really turn that game upside down, and it showed. So, the apple does not fall far from the tree, and that's exactly what we saw with Pat Noonan, very much doing his best Jimmy Curtin right there.
Yeah, that's a tough way to lose if you're a Cincinnati fan. That is brutal. It really, again, I'm fully for it. After all the crap we got from them, I love it.
Yeah. Can you imagine being on that supporters wall or whatever section and just like, okay, we're winning 2-0, and then coughing it up in extra time, 3 unanswered? It's unbelievable. It's really bad. And I've been trying to keep busy for a variety of reasons, and gotten a hold of the video database that the different MLS teams work on or submit stuff. And it's been nice to keep busy by listening to press conferences, sharing clips, etc. But man, like you could just see the joy in Wilfred Nancy of like, yeah, we turned it around, and glad, like so proud. So happy for him. I think a coach who put up with a lot of nonsense out in Montreal, not saying that ownership or anything, but, a very tough roster to work with. He was definitely a coach above coaching a roster like that. And it shows right now that he has a ownership group as well as the players in place to play his system. It's bravo to them. And I wish him the best of luck. LAFC is not going to be easy, but they definitely playing at home, a big advantage.
I mean, kudos. I know nobody wants to say it, but kudos to LAFC. They go back-to-back years to the MLS. That's still not an easy task, especially with how much soccer was played this year. I know we all hate them. I get it, but that's impressive. You have to admit it's impressive. I know they have the money too. I get it. Whatever. But we're all Crew fans this coming week once they play. I know we want to see Columbus over LAFC for sure. No, but they're a likable team, and I think the rivalry has only now grown between Philly and Cincinnati for sure, because it's just after this past postseason and everything leading up to it, it just next year is going to be even more fun. But you did mention Joaquin Torres. We did have a roster release today for next year's team. We both already had a chance to look at it. Nothing too crazy, I don't think. Maybe you might disagree with me. I know Sorensen's out. Joe Bendick is out. You've had a few hours to think about it. What do you think about the roster?
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, in discussion with other people, I think the biggest surprise was Torres's option being picked up again. I really think that this is an opinion of someone who's behind a microphone, right? I'm not Joaquin Torres out there playing, etc. But making $309,000 a year for what he provided, which was less than I think I did the math. It was like $80-some thousand a minute or something like that he featured. Like it was an unbelievable amount that he was being paid, or 8,000 some per minute. So the math was bananas. So Torres's option being picked up was interesting to me, unless it's very much a sign and trade, kind of like what we'll see in terms of Carranza. Because they don't want him to go through, he's not eligible for free agency. Obviously, they wouldn't let him go for free. But if his option would not have been picked up, Carranza would have gone through the re-entry draft, et cetera, and would have been someone else's price. So, of course, it was in the union's, imperative and best decision making to sign or accept the option. So. Mm-hmm. I think Torres is the biggest one. I think where I also scratch my head a little bit is, and I'm intrigued. I know this is probably a hot take, but I really would have thought, unless, I don't know, I would have thought that Leon Flock would have been either not had his option picked up, or maybe this is what they're thinking, pick up the option and negotiate, because this is his last option. After this, he is a free agent. Or whatever. I don't even know if he's been in the league. He's over 24, but I'm not sure if he's done his 5 years of service to be eligible for free agency. So I'm I'm not surprised that they picked up the option, but I'm wondering why they picked up the option, right? He's had a tough season last year after, running so much the last couple of years, but intrigued to hear your thoughts in terms of surprises or non-surprises.
Well, for those who haven't kind of seen the list yet, just so I have given a better idea of what we're talking about here. So I'll list off first the options exercised. So they exercise Carranza, Donovan, Flock, Lowe, Raffanello, Torres, and Holden Trent. The players out of contract are Bedoya, Bendick, and Kai. The caveat, though, for Wagner and Bedoya, in that press release that we got in our emails today, it's mentioned that Alejandro and Wagner are currently in contract negotiations. And I'll put that in quotation marks because I don't know how else you would describe it, because I don't believe it necessarily. I'll believe it when I see it. Jose, I'll actually shoot to you about a quote that Jim Curtin had in his press conference today regarding that. So we'll get there in a second. Players out of contract, like I said, Bedoya, Bendick, Wagner. Options declined are Anton Sorensen. And then on loan are Richard Odata, who's been playing well on his loan, by the way. He's done well so far. So hopefully we get back Odata and we'll go from there. I know technically Perea is still on loan, but I believe that's been worked out where that will be just NYCFC's player moving forward. So I am not entirely surprised by Flock because of how much Jim has praised Flock over the years. I do think it's unfortunate he went through so many injuries this year. I think if he stays healthy, he was probably more of an active role player in our roster this year, whether you want to admit it or not. I don't personally like that, but it is what it is. I think Flock still plays a lot of value defensively. I was shocked by Torres because I can't picture him being happy being literally the last man on the bench besides Brendan Craig every single time. Raffanello. Even Raffanello saw more time over than Torres at times. I don't think that he stays next year. I think, like you said, there's some sort of deal in the works moving forward because can he provide something useful to another team? Maybe. I wasn't impressed by him all year. I don't think anybody else was impressed by him all year, but he might try to find some contender out there who can at least use him off the bench for something. But I'm interested to see what they do with Bedoya. So did you ask a question about the communication for Jim Curtin and Tanner, or did you just quote it? I forget. I'll shoot to you.
I just quoted. I think it was the guy from the Inquirer asked it about the communication between or what was going on, what was the deal, or where are they in terms of working with Bedoya, and the answer was pretty obvious that it was prepared, right? I think that they knew that was going to be question one.
Of course,
aside from Wagner, and I want to say I was so happy to be able to make it to the press conference. I know not a lot of happy campers in terms of press people who got the email at 9:50 announcing a noon press conference the same day. Not easy for folks to make that trip, especially those of us who are content creators and this is not our full-time gig. So yeah, it's interesting. It sounds like I can give you my 2 cents, but to your point on the asterisk that you can put on something or a release saying ongoing contract negotiations, the same thing was on the press release for last year with Corey Burke, and he ended up not returning, so he went to New York.
Interesting.
So it's not an end-all be-all or a guarantee, but I feel like the situation has changed drastically, not in terms of Bedoya, but with Kai. The leverage is all gone ever since everything that happened in New England. I think the ship has sailed, maybe in a way, with one of the top 5 European leagues. I'm not sure that there would be much interest for him. Maybe I'm completely wrong. I don't know that he wants to do a second division league in Germany. Maybe, feels closer to home. And I can't imagine that there are many MLS teams who want to carry the baggage of having him on the roster, right? Like, the way I framed it for somebody was, what if Van Zier came to the Union, right? Yeah. Someone who did something similar to Kai at first, and this is where there's a difference. At first, Van Zier did not admit it, and then he admitted it, and now he's gone through whatever counseling, etc. what if he was to come to the Union? How would the Union would feel, right? Except it's obviously Kai going elsewhere.
I view it as if Michael Vick can get a job, there's hope for everybody. And I know that's obviously comparing two very drastic things, but
Lord, I was not expecting that.
The point being is there's always one owner out there who will take the risk on somebody, regardless of their past. So, but to your point, I'm not really sure what's the vibe on Kai Wagner across the league? What's the vibe on him across different leagues? I mean, granted, I've also been kind of more in college basketball. I've been kind of busy on it as well. So maybe I'm just ignorant to this information, but have you heard anything from other teams or content creators that might have said something about Kai?
Yeah. So I've been keeping sort of a finger on the pulse, right, of how are teams feeling and just kind of picking up on, right. I'm nowhere near as big by any stretch of the imagination and social media is like a Tom Boger. But as soon as Tom, shared a very interesting Ernst Tanner quote where he mentioned, it's really interesting that the aggressor did not get any punishment, meaning that Bobby Wood was the initiator of this entire situation. But outside of that, looking at the comments, not very happy in terms of, Kai. No one's clamoring. It didn't seem like anyone was clamoring to have somebody like Kai in their roster. And this is just, random people responding to the biggest MLS insider. So take that with a grain of salt. Sure. But again, when you think about jersey sales, et cetera, I don't know that Kai pulls that for you. Obviously it's interesting in that sense, but we know the guy can ball. I think he's probably obviously an all-star caliber player. Biggest creator for this team, one of the better defenders as well in this team, a left foot that's unbelievable. So I think a lot of teams would be very happy to have him. It's just, can they deal with the optics? And honestly, the entire conversation, I don't want to say goes away because that desensitizes the idea of what he did, which is obviously terrible, right? Racism's awful. But I hate to say that I don't subscribe to the no tolerance idea, right? I think that there's a lot of work that can be done with Kai in terms of rehabilitating, working with him, making sure he's better educated with everything that went on. But I wonder if a hell of a lot of, I don't know, does a heck of a lot of community service and good face sort of alleviate everything? I'm not sure. It's a very, very fascinating situation.
Well, I mean, ultimately, winning heals, quote, and I say that with quotation marks for those who aren't watching me, everything, right? If a team picks up Kai Wagner and they go on and win the MLS Cup because he had 12 assists and played phenomenal, are people going to be booing him at the parade? No, they're not going to. There is a market out there for Kai. Now, whether you agree with me or not, that's a different argument entirely, but I do think he's going to get a job somewhere. Angel brings up Bobby Wood talked about his kids and wife. Kai should have just hit him and said that probably would have gotten him less hot water, Angel, if he just hit him rather than. No, I completely agree with you. And he said Kai has said time and time he wants to stay in Philly, and that's true. Also, I found this really weird, and I have never seen a professional athlete do this ever. And maybe correct me if I'm wrong. So Kai on his Instagram posted like 7 different jerseys, cleats, and all different kinds of his own memorabilia that he was just auctioning off on social media. I've never seen a departing athlete do that while he's still technically under contract for the team. It was really weird. And he posted like the list, like, hey, congrats to all the winners because now they've earned my, player worn gear, that kind of stuff. It's just been very bizarre. The whole thing's been very bizarre. I don't see it being as serious of an issue as, like I said, something as serious as Michael Vick or something, as you said, the guy who declined even saying it to begin with. I think Kai has saved himself a little bit there, a tiny bit. And I do think a team takes a risk on him. Now, whether he leaves or not, that's a different story entirely. I think the bigger thing is Bedoya. I think the fact that Tanner was so blunt with him about that is kind of alarming. We've already talked about this before, so I'm curious now what the new number will be. Because if Bedoya has already said, I will take a lesser number to play for the Union, it's like, well, where's the agreement then? And where would that money have gone otherwise? What was Tanner's plan then?
Yeah, that's also fascinating, right? And I think it was pretty apparent when Jim was, whether it was regurgitating his practice response or being on the spot answering it with some talking points that he had memorized, because they came in, both shook our hands, said hello, sat down at the podium or whatever, the table on top of the elevated surface. But it has to make sense for the player, for his family, for the club. So I wonder what that is, right? And it is Alejandro, and I think he would be. And again, this is us totally speculating. We don't know anything about what's going on through his mind, but is he willing to accept not being the Iron Man anymore, right? Ceding the time and space to someone like Jesus Bueno or a Jack McGlynn, obviously both slightly different players. And it was really interesting listening to Peter Vermes talk on his end of season presser, talking about his roster changes and being asked a question about Graham Susie and the other guy who played for Wigan, who killed Manchester City in 2014 at the FA Cup, whose name's escaping me right now. But Peter Vermes saying, asked the question, like, are you looking to get younger? Or do you attribute not being younger to the reason why you exited when you exit in the playoffs? And Peter Vermes is very quick to say, listen, the analytics are there. We were just fine with these two guys. We were totally okay. So does that translate to the union? I think we've heard it from Jim. We've heard it from many times from Jim, I should say, that the analytics show that he is just as productive, just as successful and creative as he was a couple of years ago. And obviously he brings more. He brings more than yeah, I don't know. He supposedly brings more than he did 5-6 years ago, or about the same. So it's whether you believe it or is it. And I think maybe this becomes more of a the perennial eye test versus looking at a spreadsheet, right? Like the conversation of like, well, on a spreadsheet he looks great, but when you're sitting watching the game, it's a completely different story. That's subjective, but what I think is objective is that he brings a lot more to the locker room than can be expressed in a spreadsheet, as well as the community, as well as how he and his family have embedded themselves into the city of Philadelphia with their philanthropic support work, as well as campaigning for 2026 and Philadelphia being one of the host cities. So I'm really intrigued. If it's not Philadelphia, is it anywhere else? Or is it retirement? I'm not sure.
So before I talk about Bedoya, because I have a few points on that, Angel mentions here, he says he talks to Jenny, he does it every year, apparently giving away his gear. If that's the case, I apologize, but still, it's still kind of weird for a player on his way out to do that. Anyway, he said that he was in Punta Cana this morning running in union shorts. So I did see that post. Kai's running on the beach or something, and he's shooting his phone downward like this, and he's recording his legs, and his union shorts are going. I'm like, if there was ever a cryptic message on the day of roster decisions to post something like that was today. That was early this morning from Kai. But to your point about Bedoya, I do think he has to take on, as we've said earlier, a bench role. And if that's like Joaquin Torres-esque, where he's only in occasionally or maybe like every 30 minutes, that's fine. He just has to accept that. I do think he brings value for 30, 40 minutes a game. And I think we saw that at the end of the year as well.
We saw in the Leagues Cup, Mike.
Yeah, I don't see him leaving to retire somewhere else like Gaddis did. I don't. I just don't. I think his ties to Philly are too strong for him to do that.
Oh, again, and I want to say shout out. We have a listener, name escaping me, but shout out to the listener who, I don't know what the final bid was, but I remember retweeting or tweeting out the auctioning of signed items in terms of a Gastag and Bedoya. One of our listeners and / followers on Twitter ended up winning that auction, and Bedoya was so thankful. Right? Yeah, okay, that's what it was. Sorry. So thankful that it's in a good home, and B, it's a great cause. So shout out to Evie for doing that. It's hard-earned money, especially in these tough times, to support a cause like that. It's unbelievable. So shout out to her if she's listening or watching.
Yeah, I saw her tweet earlier. That's pretty awesome. And as you said, it goes to the right person. So again, Bedoya, I do hope he's back. He does bring a lot to the club. I think it's clear that you need some leadership in that locker room. because it's kind of a question mark afterwards who's really going to take that next step. Because that's the thing. If Bedoya's out, Andre Blake's not going to be the captain. I don't think he is. I think they're going to give it to probably Glesnes or Gazdag. I mean, I just don't know who would wear the armband. And I think Jacob would probably be the next one up. And that's only just because he's done it so many times this season.
Well, I think in the past, but Andre Blake. Sorry, I don't know why I blanked out, but Andre Blake has worn the armband from time to time. Gut check though, Mike, and I see we have some comments too that you can flash as I talk here. Gut check, if we're gonna check ourselves right here between both of them in terms of Wagner and Bedoya. I think I actually put more on Kai coming back than Bedoya. I actually see a world where Kai comes back and Bedoya does not.
Really?
I do see it. I really do think, and I was chatting with another one of our pals on the way home from the press conference, and I didn't have the gut to ask it. I wish I would have. Maybe it would have been something off the record or on background, whatever. But the entire time, Jim Curtin today and Tanner as well, sitting next to him, not necessarily Tanner in voicing it, but nodding along or maybe grinding his teeth a little bit. Jim kept on saying, this is all miscommunication. This is all miscommunication. How do you miscommunicate not wanting your longtime captain to come back? What does that miscommunication look like? Was Jim not using Grammarly and he did a don't versus do, like want him back?
No,
like
it was simply it was simply Curtin wanted him back, and Tanner just made the decision without ever consulting, because that's what he suggested at the press conference as well. He said, he said somebody said it, that he wasn't basically, he should have say in whether the captain comes back. Was that him? Was that did I remember that correctly?
That was Jim after Cincinnati. There's no club in the world, or in any club in the world, you'd think that the coach would get a say in who his captain is and whether he wants his captain back. So and that's valid. That's totally valid. But
before I put up the comments from all our now fellow commenters here, didn't Jim just seem a little more tense next to Tanner? Or is it just me kind of making more out of nothing?
Mike, you're not making more out of nothing. As I sat in that room, I could tell that Jim and I have appreciated my relationship with Jim. I think he recognized me. He said thank you for what I do. And was he blowing smoke? I don't know. The one answer, the question I asked about interleague trades and his assessment of Perea, Lowe, and Torres. He was very quick to say, I know you asked me this last time, and here's what I wish I would have said to you, right? In terms of, Brandon Craig's a local kid, so he can come, versus Perea, who is comfortable in New York because that's where he's been living. And yeah, he was just in Miami, etc. So he knows who I am now, I think, in a way, and has thanked me for my clips, etc., whatever. But I could tell that, calling, and maybe he was joking. I think it was sort of joke, but call Tanner boss. just little things that you could tell, oh, this is not the free flowing and off the cuff saying that 25 clubs are in disarray Jim Curtin anymore. It's a little more held back.
Even and I'll get to the comments section, guys. I see it. It's great stuff. Even the way his hands are placed, you can't see his hands are just right in front of the mic, like this, very still on one of the clips. And it was a very awkward vibe. I don't know. I mean, again, this is just me seeing it off Twitter, not being there like Jose was. So let me get to the comments. So Kyle, one of the half of the one team we agree on, says final 20 minutes for Ali would be his role. Jim kind of agrees with him as well. So he's still very valuable to the Union, maybe in reduced minutes. JD Walker from Stream Punk Entertainment. JD, hello, how are you doing? He says, I think Bedoya should come back as a super sub like Corey Burke used to be. Does Ernst want that, though? If not, retirement. I'd rather see a Martin Brodeur, St. Louis Blues situation, which I get, kind of end with the team you've been with. Apparently, everybody thinks Blake should be the captain once Ali leaves. I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying I think Jacob has made a good case for it. That's all. And he was captain a couple times as well. Phil USMNT says as well, goalie's often captain in soccer. Blake, to me, is a clear choice. I don't disagree with you guys. I love Andre Blake. I like Jacob too.
He captains Jamaica, right? No, is that Mikel
No,
Antonio now that he came
I
in?
don't think he does. Jim says one time Carson Wentz posted a picture of him in Eagles, Colts, and Washington merch. That's right. I forgot about that. And now, where's Wentz now? I forget at this point where he went to. Did he go to the Rams?
I don't know. He's irrelevant in my mind, man.
Exactly. Oh, look, he is the captain for Jamaica. There you go, Jose.
Okay, there you go. Yeah,
There you
I
go.
thought he was, but I know that team has had an influx of uh, folks who changed allegiances in terms of going from England to Jamaica now, and there's a few other faces that people may not be happy about that I'm hearing that they're doing some campaigning to try to get them over, including one who just dealt with a case of domestic violence and got away with it supposedly.
Oh yeah, Damian Lowe had a little quote on that, didn't he? When you asked him that question.
Yeah, and I dug a little bit deeper, and I was a few people reached out to me who know more about it after I posted that quote, and it's interesting.
Yeah.
There's Mason Greenwood might be a face that shows up on that roster, especially going into Copa America.
Interesting. I like it. So listen, we have not much time before the season starts. So I think we've said that the CONCACAF Champions Cup starts around early February. So that gives us about 2 months.
Yeah, what was it? Jim, I think
Process.
dropped the date today of like January 12th when everybody comes back, or that's a date that he envisions maybe like preseason starting. Whether that's him just talking out loud because he's done it in terms of like when he mentioned that the first game of the first of 3 series was going to be like October 11th or something like that, and it didn't end up being till like a little bit later than that. So,
Right.
yeah, it's a quick turnaround. I think just 4 or 5 weeks at this point for preseason for bodies to show up, and yeah, a lot of bodies that have questions about whether or not they actually show up.
That's such a short period of time. It really is. I don't understand how these players are going to even be able to rest properly. I feel like you're
Well,
going to have a quicker burnout in the summer.
if you're Kai Wagner, you're running out in Punta Cana on the sand, right, wearing union shorts.
That's very true. No, again, we've talked about this before. I believe on the One Team We Agree On's episode with Dave Leno, they
Great
talked
show,
about
great
it
episode.
was a great show. Jillian and Kyle, it was a great episode. We talked about this previously on one of our other episodes as well. How Dave was kind of very vocal about the displeasure of this new schedule that we saw this year and how long the season was and the player health. And I just think if all these players are getting such a short amount of rest, are their bodies going to start getting hurt sooner than they were last year? I mean, maybe in the summertime you'll see more injuries. The burnout rate will be just much quicker than what we saw because we're still going to have Leagues Cup, aren't we?
Yeah, Leagues Cup still is here to stay. Obviously, a moneymaker. So
Wonderful.
to that point, Mike, a couple of points. One from the
Sure.
press conference, actually 2 of them from the press conference, and one technically an AAT Sports exclusive at the time on Friday
Here we
evening.
go.
But 40,000 miles, the mileage that the union put on in terms of travel this year. So that's a very, very impressive number. But then also I reported on Friday, a couple of sources helped me out with this. Walter Grandes, who is their lead sports science guy, as well as Medi, last name escaping me right now, their lead fitness coach, both departing the Philadelphia Union. So 2 guys who were very important in making sure that team stayed healthy during the season. So both gone, and actually it's confirmed now that Walter's off to LAFC. Can't share much more than that, but yeah, this is the season where turnover happens, but to lose 2 of those guys in such an important department and in the sports science department is it's difficult to say the least.
No, I agree, and it's and for players like Bedoya who will come back, who are obviously getting older, it's like how does hopefully the reduced time for him would help him with the longevity side of things, but for a player like Jacob and Jack Elliott who've been playing so much, it's like we need more depth in those positions. We really do, because we just can't trot them out there again for another 50 some games and expect him to. I mean, look, Jacob had his he had his basically season-ending injury when we needed him the most, and it's because he just played endlessly. And that honestly begs the question: maybe we should have sacrificed that, consecutive game streak earlier in the season, given him some rest, because who knows what the outcome could have been at Cincinnati if we had Glesnes in there. or other.
I want to address this comment here super quick, JD. I
Sure,
would
go ahead.
not classify Walter and Medi as lower level staff. I know they're not, assistant coaches in terms of like what a Pat Noonan was or anything like that to Jim, but Walter and Medi were very, very important parts of this team. So I just want to be super clear, JD. Let's not classify those two as lower level staff. It's not like we're losing the kit man, right? It's not like we're losing as much
Fang.
as we appreciate. It's not. We're not losing Fang, or we're not as much as I love the work that JD, Mr. Buck, who makes sure that field is looking as beautiful as it does every single CJ Buck, making sure it looks as great as it does. And I posted a beautiful picture, which no grass should look as beautiful as it did today when I was at the stadium. Losing him is obviously very different than losing someone like Walter and Medi. So I just wanted to sort of quantify that this is actually a very important loss and a huge gain for someone like LAFC. So congratulations to Walter for getting paid. I can't blame him.
Exactly. One question here from near 1204. Was this year's playoff format a test trial, or is it here to stay? So I'm going to go back to the episode of the one team we agree on again, because Dave also talked about this.
Yes.
And this wasn't the first time we've seen this type of format in the playoffs. And I do think that the MLS, for being a bit short-sighted in their decisions this year, would be absolutely idiotic if they went back next year and ran it back the same exact way. I think there has to be some form of change, whether it's the first the play of three kind of thing, whether how many teams make the playoffs next year. There has to be something. There's no way they saw this whole thing play out and say everything was perfect, we're just going to do it again. If it is, I think a lot of fans can be disappointed.
Yeah, it's interesting, right, Mike? Because I think this is all going to come down to once MLS Cup is over on the 9th at whatever, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. I think it starts at 4:30 on the 9th. Once it's over, I think there's a quick turnaround and the owners' meetings happen. I wonder if there's going to be a leak. So Tom Bogert, please do your best. Pablo Maurer, everybody who's involved in that type of work, do your digging. I'm really interested in terms of what were the metrics that they're using to quantify whether this was a success or not, right? Sure, best of 3 allows every single team playing to at least get one home game, which is obviously money in the pocket of the owners. But was the wild card necessary? Right.
That's Jillian's point right there. Too many teams in playoffs.
Okay. I didn't even see that. I was like looking away, thinking like where the wild cards, where the wild card match is necessary, where allowing more teams in necessary. I don't know. And that's where once you mess with their pockets, that's where they want change. I don't think that they'll change if it was positive. If that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. And Pallet 12 says, I know tons of casual fans that didn't even know the playoffs were still going on. I agree with you. It's a lot of people were like, oh, are they still playing? Oh, the season's still going on. I wouldn't even notice because it's, again, going back to what we talked about the other week, the ability to just turn your TV on and casually find the Union playing on PHL 17 had a lot of advantages for especially because you're still growing this sport. It's not like Premier League where people are going to pay to watch it because it's been around for forever and has the level it does. People aren't going to pay for the MLS because the soccer is amazing. No, it's still a growing sport in the United States. It has to get to the point where people are willing to pay for it. People are simply not willing to pay for it right now. That's about it. JD mentions again the 2-leg aggregate in first round. Do semis on game 2 as game 3. That way only 4 teams had to play past international break. That would have made more sense again. And again, the comments keep coming, guys. Appreciate it. I'm trying to get to as many as I can. But really quick, though, you mentioned Saturday's game in Columbus. The weather out in Columbus. The weather out in Columbus is 50% chance of rain, low of 47, high of 57. So it's going to be a little wet.
That sounds awful.
Going to be a little sloppy. You know it's going to be colder than what it feels like out there, 47 degrees. So LAFC is not going to have the same luxury they had last year in the beautiful LA weather.
Mike, the question is, and I know we have 2 listeners at least, maybe 3, who will appreciate this, but who's going to throttle who?
I do think Columbus wins. I honestly do. I just
Yeah.
want them to win because fuck LA. I don't know. Maybe that's where I'm sitting at right now. But I don't know. I think Columbus pulls it off.
I think so too. I think Columbus is a well enough and well-rounded enough roster that's just how do you not run on a high after that win? That's the thing, right? Like after the beating Cincinnati the way they did it, I have a hard time seeing. And even the way that LA played against the Union, those first 45, 60 minutes, right? Where like the Union, not often, were like, it's not often that you see the Union taking the offensive, but like those first 60 minutes of MLS Cup last year, the Union were ahead. So it'll be a really interesting match to see. But hey, to your point on ratings and what's going to make sense in terms of next year, there is a rumor from the Wall Street Journal that Paramount Plus and Apple, whether this includes MLS season pass or not, that's a different conversation, but the Apple paid service, which I guess it's called just Apple TV Plus or whatever, they're in talks about maybe bundling both of the services together into a super service. So if that's telling of where MLS season pass, it's a different conversation, but just something to keep in mind that if it gets lumped in, there might be a benefit to being an MLS season pass subscriber if you also get Paramount Plus, which has a ton of soccer in terms of the Argentinian League, Brazilian League, as well as the, I think, Champions League and the Italian League. So plenty to watch if both services do somehow do a 2-for-1 sort of deal.
There's just so many services now. Like you honestly end up paying. You know what? Really, that's just. I'm gonna go off a small little financial tangent.
We were talking about this, Mike, with my family over the weekend too.
So, I have the ESPN, Disney, and Hulu bundle package. I think when I first got that package, which is great because you know me, I love college basketball. They have every game possible on there, so I watch all the time. I like Disney, Star Wars. I'm a big Star Wars fan. Whatever. When I first bought it, it was like maybe 14, 15 bucks for the 3 of them. It was a great deal. And they slowly keep bumping up my price. Now I pay like 19 bucks for the Disney bundle package for all 3 of them. I'm like, why are these multi-billion dollar companies charging me more for this streaming service? Why can't I just pay 15 bucks?
I remember when Disney Plus launched, it was $5.99, and I think now it's up to itself like $15.
Netflix is probably close to 20. To be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult.
Yeah. Well, Jim says there's way too many streaming services. You have 6 streaming services. You might as well just paying for cable.
It's almost like an Ouroboros snake, right? Where like they began to move away and separate, helping the customer pick what you want. And I know this is so off topic, but like eventually as it evolved and more services began to start, now we're getting to the tail end eating itself. We're like, maybe it makes sense to go back to cable where it's cheaper than paying all of these separate services all at once. So yeah, it's difficult, but listen, if you're a passionate soccer person who has an interest in Italian soccer, Argentine, Brazilian, Paramount Plus makes so much sense. But if you throw in the MLS, and I think Apple needs to find a way to justify more than just MLS, maybe there's a deal on coming with Premier League, I don't know, or something else. That would be a massive service to have an MLS plus whatever plus Paramount Plus with the Champions League. So just keep an eye out for that in the coming years.
God, it's JD mentions it's all about the money. That's all it is. It drives me nuts, though, JD. It really does. Speaking of money, and I kind of just thought of this because of Jillian's comment. My money's on Columbus. So you want to hear the money lines and all this stuff for the game this weekend? For those who enjoy
betting, Mike. Here we go.
Let me have my moment, Jose.
Scratch that itch, baby.
So Columbus Crew are at plus 115 for regular time. Okay, LAFC are plus 220 for regular time. To win the cup, though, Crew is favored at minus 155. LAFC are plus 120. So if you
even
think the Crew are, they're minus 155 at home.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. I got them confused.
Yes.
Sorry. I don't put money on the line for this type of stuff as often as you. So relax.
That's true. I apologize. So basically, they're favorites at home to win the cup, not to win it. They're not huge favorites to win it in regulation, but they are favored to win the cup at -155. So it's not terrible juice if you think Columbus is going to pull it off. You're just not going to get a whole lot back for your dollar, but that's besides the point. I'm not surprised by that line, especially with the weather being what it is. I think if it was a nice day, I think maybe the line would be a little bit lower, but that's just me.
You're such a degenerate. I love it.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, you've seen my recent posts about the Big East basketball. JD can appreciate that because I know he covers Seton Hall. JD, what up? I have been full blown.
I know you're itching.
I'm itching.
You're scratching that itch so hard, and I'm so happy for you, Mike. Because whether people realize it or not, there was a point where Mike was tempted to not continue AAT sports or the across the pitch stuff, but I'm glad that he's able to now channel all of those itches and scratching them through this Big East stuff. It's awesome. But Mike, I think as we maybe close the show here, it's probably best for us to maybe make some predictions on MLS Cup. Maybe talk a little bit about our plans going into the off season, albeit very short, and maybe just finish up in terms of just some final comments, what we're thankful for, that type of thing, if that makes sense to you.
Let's run it. You go first. You take the lead here. We'll close the show out.
Yeah, when it comes to MLS Cup, I think it's going to be a very fun match. I don't think it's going to be anything like what we experienced last year with Philadelphia. Obviously, we had an interest in that match with Philadelphia being involved, but I really do believe that Columbus is going to come on top. I don't think I can muster seeing another LAFC a star on top of that crest 2 years in a row. That would be unbelievable. But kudos to them for making it as far as they have. But I'm thinking a 2-1 Columbus Crew win in regulation. No extra time, no penalties or nothing. Well, how about you?
I completely agree with you. I think they could pull it off in extra time. Though
I said regulation.
Oh, I'm sorry, regulation. I do think they can pull off in regulation. I think the weather helps. I do think them being at home helps a lot. I think it was an LAFC. I think maybe go extra time, maybe PKs. I think the Crew pull it off. I think they've just been getting better as the year progressed. They're a good team, and I actually agree with you. 2-1 makes a lot of sense. So I'll agree with you on that one. What's the next thing you want to discuss here before our sign off?
I think maybe we can talk about or sort of what we're planning for the off season. Again, albeit so short, I think we have a nice little plan, or at least we're trying to have a nice little plan of content drops throughout the off season. Again, albeit way too short. I'm working through some stuff here with my family, so I'm going to be out of pocket for probably a week or so. Just honestly decompressing. It's been a long season. I think it really ratcheted up right before Leagues Cup. I really started to go hard, and I haven't turned off since. So I'm just going to take some time to really slow down a bit and hopefully have some small bits of content in terms of conversations with, I think, some faces that people would be very, very impressed that I was able to land, and U.S. national team, ex-U.S. national team folks, as well as some union, I would think, legends that we're working on, and hopefully it all happens. We'll see what happens. Need to make sure some things happen there first. But I think what you can expect throughout the offseason is just updates, right? I'm certainly going to be on in terms of MLS Cup, right? We have one more week. So listening to those press conferences, doing some clips, et cetera, and certainly giving some thoughts after the match. Nothing more than maybe like a couple of clips here and there. But beyond that, just keep an eye out for our socials in terms and our feed for conversations. Maybe Mike and I hop on the mic for 25, 30 minutes. If we see some unbelievable news, I maybe alluded to it earlier. I don't see someone like Julian Carranza coming back to this roster. I think maybe I was the last person to talk to him leading into his departure from Philadelphia to God knows where. Maybe he's going to exercise his Greek language that he has been learning. Maybe he's going to speak German. I don't know. So keep an eye out for that. Just small content drops through my social channels and the AAT Sports channel. And Mike does a great job in retweeting some of that stuff. And I guess maybe we just turn it over to sort of what we're thankful for this season, right? It's been a very, very, very long.
Hi, Pat.
Hi, Pat. Very long season that I think brought a lot of really good stuff and a lot of really big growing moments for us.
I agree. So the MLS Cup, really quick though, before I continue on that,
Is
Columbus
this
scored
betting?
67 goals this year. Columbus scored.
You're a
LAFC only scored
sicko.
54. I know LAFC had a statistically down year for them, for that club, offensively speaking. But Columbus, they're outscored them by 13 goals this year. It's pretty, they put up numbers. Yeah, anyway, for my offseason, I am covering the Big East via Twitter, just putting out some stuff on the teams that are playing every single night for college basketball. There's only 11 teams, so it's not terrible. Like today, they're off, which is nice. I'm kind of focusing on Villanova, who are basically Jekyll and Hyde, excuse me, of the college basketball world. They can beat, the teams out in the Battle for Atlantis competition, but they lose to Drexel, Penn, and St. Joe's. So how that makes sense, we don't know yet. We'll see what happens to Kyle Neptune out in Villanova. That's my college basketball rant for today. I'll end now to spare Jose. Besides that, though, Jose, I think you're right. I think just taking time to decompress. It was a long season. I know me, leading this way since Dave's out in England has been very challenging at times. But it's nice to just take a break. This past, I would be remiss if I don't give a little birthday shout out. All right, I got 2 birthday shout outs. My daughter's godmother's birthday is today. My girlfriend's birthday is tomorrow. So we've had a busy weekend of just celebrating, having a great time. So happy birthday
Let's
to
be
you
clear.
too.
Let's be clear. Are they watching or is she watching?
I'll send them to them. I'm sure.
Okay.
Like, hey, listen, I shouted you guys out.
Listen, he shouted you out. You know who I'm talking about. Mike's trying to get laid.
Oh, stop.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go on, Mike.
I know. No, you're fine. But anyway, again, just appreciation for everybody listening. We had a lot of new commenters this year, Jose.
Yeah,
like people we've never met before in our life. A lot of new friends. Like, for example, when we watched the Eastern Conference semifinal at Brauhaus Schmitz, I went out with Elvia, Dan, Jimmy King, just people I never even knew existed before the season. And now we were out there, all 4 of us having a great time watching this game. So it's been a lot of fun meeting new people. Jim, Liner, Pat, Bernard, JD, all these great commenters and stuff like that who've joined us for this season. So listen, you won't be missing us for too long. We'll be back in February. So we'll be right back at it at Subaru Park. But yeah, any last thoughts, Jose, or can we call it a night?
No, I think you encapsulated it very well. I think for me as, dealing with some personal stuff that's been very, very tough these last 72 hours or so. The distraction has been very good, and I think it's very telling that this Union family is very good and very strong. Much to what you mentioned in terms of meeting new people, I'd be remiss to not mention someone like Kyle and Todd and Jillian. I know sometimes gives me a headache and some agita, but Billy Myers as well. It's been very nice to get to meet a lot of people who have helped us grow as well. And I think on a personal note, I think taking AET sports and across the pitch to a different stratosphere is probably the best way to say it, right? In terms of the content that we've provided, right? How in depth we've gone into some things, to be able to break some news, to be able to chat about news that others are not talking about, right? Like it's been a very fulfilling season for me. I don't get, but as someone who enjoys this and has really thoroughly loved and sharing voices that are not heard all the time in terms of our Spanish speaking players, as well as players that, maybe have a different message that they want to share, or backroom staff that do such great work that no one listens to or hears about, has been so fulfilling. And I can't, I mention it every time I posted a video or of a conversation. It has been incredible, the reception that we get in terms of our content. So I think it's a testament to not only the quantity of folks who are interested in this team, but also the quality of folks who are putting out content about this team. So as we look into the 2024 season, 24-25 season going, just 4 short weeks, I hope that you guys stick by us, and I hope that you guys also lay eyes on other content, because ultimately you gain from us working harder and harder to provide you news that other people are not, or provide you thoughts or ideas that maybe others are not. So at this point, I'll probably just end my rant by saying just a sincerely a heartfelt thank you to everybody who listens to us, who follows us on Twitter, appreciates our content, shares our content. It's unbelievable, more than I ever expected, having only been doing this with you, Mike and Dave, over the past year and a half. Really, I think
it's your first official season. Good job.
Yeah,
you made it through.
Thank you. It's been a tremendous season of growth for me in terms of reporting. And I'm really excited to see where I have some ideas of things I want to do. And I hope that people are excited for them when they come. And ultimately with Copa America 2024, unfortunately, Philadelphia not being one of the host cities, finding my way to New Jersey and Charlotte to cover some games, hopefully as a press member. So we'll see. But ultimately, again, not to overshadow just the unbelievable amount of support and thank you that we want to say to everybody who tunes in or tunes out during our content.
Agreed. Well, this is Across the Pitch. We are live every Monday night, 8:45 p.m. on the AET Sports Network. We'll probably take a short break between our next episode, but we will be back soon. Follow us on Twitter, Embraer1323. Actually, somebody on the comment section just followed me, so appreciate it. Thank you. You can also follow me on TikTok as well. I got to post more often on there, Embraer1323. Jose R. Nunez 91 on Twitter, Jose Nunez 1991 on YouTube. I know your handles better than you do.
You do.
And that is Across the Pitch, guys. Thank you again for commenting, joining. Have a great Monday night.
Have a good night, everybody.